sure that this happens is essentially making sure that we give back to our target audience, that we give back to our consumers, making them part of the process, whether it is when we release new product, making sure that we ask them for their point of view. We want them to really feel that we are not just selling you a product, we're making you a part of this entire kind of journey.
So Nikhil, in terms of just from what John has said, the return on investment for most of the companies out there, obviously they consider it to be financial. Do they consider emotion and loyalty to be a part of that ROI? Is it part of that formula?
I mean, just to build on what you just said, we've seen brand loyalty to a larger extent has a lot of rational behavior to it, but it is irrational as well. I represent a brand that we've got loyalists who swear by us for the last 20 years. We've been in the smartphone business, and we've seen consumers and fans queue up on our online as well as offline channels to just buy the first smartphone. And I'm sure there are a lot of other brands that can say the same. There is no rational behavior to it. And when we tailor that down to ROI, obviously it does translate into short-term benefit, but then there's so much more longevity in terms of how that value translates over a period of time. Like I said, I mean, we've got people, customers who've been with us for 20 years. Today, when we transition from smartphone to a different business unit, that consumer fan base, they tend to stay loyal because they believe in what the brand says. And I'd like to add another layer to this. I think pricing in some way is kind of an anti-loyalty metric, because I mean, it just justifies the fact that someone's willing to jump ship just because you're offering a better value on a product or service. And that's something where we always look at pricing as a parameter to get new audiences towards us as a brand or on a product. But then those who are loyal, irrespective of pricing, they tend to stay. And that's why I think ROI, in a way, tends to kind of justify that for the long term.
Go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
I think we sometimes when we talk about pricing, we jump straight into cheap or value for money. But when you're actually talking about a pricing strategy, I think it's very different. If it's aligned to your overall brand strategy, that's really important. We have a lot of brands coming to us, and they're in a sales spiral. They're literally, how do I get out of this? Because people are buying our brand, they expect us to be cheap. They expect it, and it also it devalues what they expect from you as a brand. How do we get out of it? And I think when it comes to pricing, if you have a proper pricing strategy, you can actually build an emotion. So it's quite often you can reframe the price. So if a consumer feels like they're getting value, it doesn't matter what the brand is. If they feel that there's value from that purchase, it's really important. And we can't ignore the situation of the economy at the moment. People want value for money. And the word value is incredibly important. It's not cheap, it's value. I want to feel like I've had an experience from this brand and I've got something from it. No matter what the price, that price can be very high or very low, but it can't always be perceived as cheap. So I think we have to keep the word pricing strategy in context. It's not always about the lowest.
Can you try to connect, because it's a very interesting conversation. We are adding some elements to the picture. I think there is an emotional connection. There is value that you attribute to something that you want to be served back from the brand and the company, and there is this laziness of the consumer. Yeah. And if you consider all these three elements, you understand that price doesn't play any role in all this. And actually, it's quite the opposite. If you think about going back to loyalty, what loyalty is the great simplifier for consumer. It's the shortcut, the mental shortcut, and this is behavioral economics. There are tons and tons of pages on how we take shortcuts in our decision making on a daily basis. And once we experience something and we have a positive return, whatever it is, can be an emotional connection, can be a social badge, can be some value that we perceive as extra add-on the price that we paid, all this returns back to us and give us a positive feedback. And this is the shortcut that we're going to have next time that we're in front of the shelf or in front of a monitor to pick up an item that we desire. So really, we need to think of loyalty in terms of the great simplifier, and how do we create this short connection, this shortcut for our customer base to get back to us. So, and I think all this play a role.
Just flipping on its head, how can a brand create a human connection? So let's take, for example, the tech companies of today. very rarely do they use a human element. They're using a lifestyle element. They're using, dynamic colors, shapes, sounds, whatever it is. Alex, what kind of human element do they involve into their branding that can influence more loyalty?
I believe they like to recognize themselves, because nowadays an issue is that all the brands, they don't really connect with the client himself. And I realize that as time passes, the communication has been pushed so much, and there is more and more psychological researchers behind that, and they understand what is the profile of the consumer. Nowadays, they found out that a consumer is an animal of habits. He likes to stay in his comfort zone. So he likes to recognize somebody on the screen, on the picture, which he can relate to. Either he can say, oh, this guy can be me. I can be the person there. Oh, for example, it's a football player. I can be this person. Oh, I know this person. I've been following him a few games. So people like to rely directly to the person they see on the screen. That's why in my business it's a bit different, because I'm working in fashion industry. So the fashion industry and the commercial aspect of it is slightly changing from just beautiful faces to somebody you actually connect to. It can be the person, or it's somebody you admire.
Sophia, in terms of how that emotional brand of the human elements, obviously you're talking of a platform which is digital, it's social, it's interacted with buttons. Your emotions, your client's emotions are shared, your customer's emotions are shared through gestures, not through physical action. Is there a way you can implement a human element into the social environment and increase that exposure even further?
Well, of all of the touch points, social, I feel, is the most emotional. It's where your customers talk to you, it's where they complain, it's where they give you their feedback, positive, negative, whatever it is. And it's up to how you're managing, mostly your community. So making sure that the moderators, people are responding, again, genuinely on brand, on tone of voice, but still building that interaction. So the simplest of things, like you put up a post and someone puts an emoji, you can ignore it, or you could choose to respond. And then that's when you build that emotional connection. That's when you're building a little bit more loyalty with who they are, because you show them that you care. You will give them that 3 seconds out of your day to, all you put was an emoji, but I responded with, great, what's your favorite flavor? Or, so glad you like the picture, or whatever it might be,
Right.
And this is where a lot of brands, I think, some do extremely well, and you see huge interactions on their pages, and they can build a lot of loyalty, because even from the smallest of things, if you're building awareness or top of mind, and especially if you're talking about products that are a little bit more day to day. If I'm out to buy a chocolate, for example, it's not like investing in a car, but if I've interacted with that brand today and they've responded, I'm a bit more likely to think of them when I'm in the supermarket next versus another.
So they embed themselves into your head, right?
Yeah, and I think it's an extremely powerful tool where at the moment social is very much, we need to put up a post, we need to pay for it, and building the community properly isn't as utilized as it could be.
Right. Okay. Let me jump on this. I want to be the Canadian salmon, flying against the current. As a social and digital person, I experienced social before social. I launched a car created on a contest for 500 days on a website before social media happened. I launched the Pirelli movie before YouTube was there. Well, 0.1% of the population watched that video, or the population that had broadband. And that was 5 million views at the time. So 0.1% of the broadband global population watched the thing. It was only 5 million views. So this is a moment in time which we think that there is a sort of humanization of the brands and the corporation. I see also the other side. I see the rise of personal brand. I see the influencer marketing being so commoditized that we treat people as objects and as devices to be sold on the shelf. So we're meeting, I think, people and brands and corporation halfway. It's not that the corporation and the brands are being transformed into human beings all of a sudden. This is a very partial view. I think we're going to the right direction in terms of that, but also us as human beings, we are thinking as companies. And I was reading this article about the generation of slackers. If you are 40 like me, you were a kid in the 90s and you remember Nirvana and all these guys, and there was Generation X, and we were slacking about, and there were plenty of movies like Clerks in which those guys were doing nothing, smoking weed and doing things, and they weren't selling their lifestyle for money. Yeah, this is a thing that we need to take in consideration, because our consumer are better salesmen than us salespeople, and we're meeting halfway through. And thinking that we need to humanize our brands and our commercial proposition is one of the elements. The other element is seeing who you have on the other side try to buy your product, because probably he's a better salesman than you are, and they're selling better product than you do, and they produce better content than you media people are doing. So it's actually a mutual understanding of how the consumer and the readership are evolving, and how the corporate world and the companies are evolving. And I think we're meeting halfway.
In addition to this, we had a quick conversation earlier actually with Guido. We were talking about how do we create content and have this human touch to it, and essentially for social media. And I think we sometimes guilty of this from an agency perspective. We forget to think like humans. And in order, it's almost that we need to kind of have a test for whenever we want to create content. And if you were to look at the different parameters of that test, I think the first one will be the content that I'm creating right now, does that actually give any value, right? And I think that's a very good starting point. If the content that we create doesn't give any value, you don't even want to create it or push it. It's pointless. And the second one that we've talked about earlier is, if you see this content, or if I see this content, will I want to share this with my followers? If you look at a relationship that we have right now, or with our mobile devices, or the relationship that we have with our social media profiles, whatever you post online, you kind of endorse that piece of content, right? We are very self-conscious of what our friends will actually think of us, or our family will think about us. So if you create a piece of content and it gives value, add value to whomever is going to consume this content, and in addition to that, makes them want to share this content, I think that we definitely have this human approach to creating content.
Nick, question for you. In today's age, we've got a lot of, in an ideal world, the brands like to think they're controlling the people. They're influencing them. The population would like to think that the brands are considering their needs and therefore giving them what they want. But in actual reality, given the influence of individuals today, is the brands controlling the population, or are the populations influencing the brands?
Good question. I'll come on to, while we're listening about, I kind of work in a bit more the hard end, our agency, where it's not all about emotion. So I'm going to just go a little bit against the conversation, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Because some of the most well-loved brands in the world don't exist anymore. They're top of the emotional brand scores, and again, the famous ones, the Kodaks, the Nokias, these are even, I mean, right through the years, you can name brands that people loved. They had a massive emotional connection with people, but then they don't deliver on the promise as you go down. And I think we take pretty much some of the best global brands. The emotional side of it is there, and we look at kind of a tipping point between emotional and rational. We haven't used the word rational or intrinsic. It seems like a dirty word in here. I love these ads. I think there's some wonderful content there, but I wouldn't buy any of those products. None of them make me.
You wouldn't buy any, but you can relate to them in terms of.
I can relate to them, but they wouldn't. I can't think now that I'm going to go out and buy any of them.
Right, but if you were bombarded with these ads throughout, let's say, the next 5 years of your life,
yeah,
do you think eventually it will convince you to go out and buy them?
If the offer continued through to the moment where I was going to purchase, but honestly, no. So again, I'm going to go against the grain. Again, okay. I love a good piece of advertising like everyone else in this room, but honestly, there needs to be more substance behind it as a brand, right? You have to. That's what I talk about, the tipping point between extrinsic and intrinsic. At the very extrinsic level, these beautiful pieces of advertising, but you have to bring it down to an intrinsic level. There has to be a reason for me to actually purchase that brand and buy that brand, and you can be swayed as the most loyal, emotive brand at the point of purchase, you can be swayed. So I'm sorry, I'm going way against the theme, but I truly believe you can't discount the importance of an intrinsic or rational benefit from a brand as well. It has to be able to deliver at that moment on the point of purchase. It can't be ignored.
So, love it, thank you. Daniel, quick one for you.
That wasn't answering your question. It had to be said, so please answer it. I think it's just important.
Daniel, in terms of today, you've got a lot of brands going through transformations. They change their branding, they change their identity, their colors. Those people who already associated loyalty with a specific brand and it gets updated or it gets totally revamped, what are the consequences of that revamp towards their loyal audience? Is there any?
I think that actually builds quite nicely on Nick's point about experience, right? Look at what Coca-Cola did in the 1990s. They decided that their product wasn't meeting the blind taste test of Pepsi, so they changed their product. But what they did was they failed to continue delivering on their promise, which was consistency from 100 years ago. And what they tried to do was meet people's needs, which was a slightly sweeter drink, but what they failed to recognize is the power and value of their brand and the loyalty behind it. So they basically devalued their own brand by not believing in it. And that's a huge problem. This is also where you get back into the price discussion, right? It's about value, it's about experience, it's about delivery on experience, and it's about delivering on the promise you put forward as a brand. Brands are not just what you say, they're what you do. And if you can't deliver on what you do, and I realize I'm sitting in a room full of communicators here, then you can have the best ads in the world, but they're never going to work. They will have great ratings, they'll have great likes on Facebook. They may even have huge engagement rates because you can be socially amazing and have a terrible product. But you have to get this right. And one of the problems, I've been working in this region for 13 years is, are you a brand-driven business or a business-driven brand? And I have worked for both.
What's the difference?
Different occasions. One is your brand strategy is aligned with your business strategy. The other one is the brand is just paying heed to what the business wants. Working in finance or telcos, and I can say this, having worked with both, they're the two most hated, least trusted industries in the world globally. Banks take your money and you don't know what they do with it, and then when you want it back, they just give it back to you. They haven't really done anything with it, and they're certainly not delivering great interest returns at the moment. Telcos, all they do, nobody says, job well done. Yes, thank you for connecting me to 10 masts simultaneously every single second of every single day with occasionally dropping that. What you get on social media is, oh, nice ad. Why is my broadband not working?
Right.
And that's what it's about, and those are two, you can, and actually having worked for telco for 8 years, you get, we track everything, and we track everything you do, by the way. No, but it's part of the business, right? That's actually how we deliver the experience. Your phone, if we don't know how often you're using it, how much you're using it, and where you are, how can we plan around that? A mobile network is this massive amorphous beast that is incredibly complex. It's not like you can walk into a shop and buy a trainer that is delivered by a logistics network. You might suddenly decide that your normal pattern changes today. And instead of going from your office to your home, from your office to your home, by the supermarket to your office to your home, you go to Oman. We have to keep up with that and make sure that your phone's still connected. So, and it's not. The minute it's not, there's a problem. And then, I've now flipped to an industry which is just joy. It was an industry, I think, social media was created for. People use social media 4 times as much as normal when they are traveling. Because they want to share all the joy and fun and love they're having. So you talk about emotional branding. Sorry, I'm going on a bit. Which emotion is it you're connecting them with? When it comes to customer service, it's usually anger, hate, and failure, and upset. When it comes to travel, it's joy and pleasure and excitement. When it comes to FMCG, I'm not really sure I'm an FMCG guy, which is probably where somebody else can step in. I actually don't understand how someone like Unilever or Nestle actually manage social forums on a regular basis. And they're not high, they don't rank high on those forums. It's a really difficult beast to deal with.
Well, on that note, we've got to end it here because we're short on time. please, guys, before you give applause to the panel, interact with them outside, ask them whatever questions, interrogate them, test them, challenge them, that's what they're here for, abuse them. Give it up for the panel. And please, we're going to take it, Dave, you want to say it? What is it? Is it a 5-minute break, 10-minute break?
We're going to go straight into the ads.
Oh, we're going straight into the ads?
Straight to the ads.
All right, okay, we're going to go straight into the ads. We're going to go straight into the ads. Okay, let's do it.
Excellent.
Thank you a lot, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Assad, and thank you very much to our esteemed panel. Thank you very much. Make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and other things, Twitter, and whatever else you can find. And up to big screens, more international ads.